Okay, okay.
Cool. We have few people around. Cool. Let's get started. Hey everyone, we have Ranjan here, who's going to talk about mosquitoes, satellite imagery, and deep learning models. Briefly about Ranjan, he works as a lead data scientist at Dramna, has expertise in data visualization, machine learning, and deep learning. He's currently working on building open source tools in and AI models for environment sustainability. This specific talk will show you how to use deep learning models to classify satellite imagery based OpenStreetMap building data to create more accurate population map than what is publicly around out there. So let's hand over to Ranjan. Ranjan, all yours. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ban. Once again, I'm just presenting my screen. Uh,
Yeah, we can see
my
you.
Yes, okay, thanks. So, this is a story of mosquitoes, satellite images, and deep learning model. I'm sure everyone would have connected to each individual topic independently, but this story connects all three things together. Let's see how it connects all three things, and let's understand how things are working here. So I'll first talk about a little bit of mosquitoes. Then I'll start showing you how to process satellite images in Python. Then OpenStreetMap, running deep learning models on satellite data. Then we'll do some post processing to solve the problem. So first, to understand the problem, let's see some of the stats. 400 million dengue infections every year. 84 countries are affected by Zika. 40% of world's population is at risk of contracting dengue, and every 4 minutes a case of chikungunya is confirmed. And to put it all together, there are 1 million deaths every year because of mosquito borne illness. This is very bad. So we'll have to find a way to fight these diseases. Like the things that I'll be talking for a couple of slides is more of research conducted by organization called World Mosquito Program, and let's see what is their method. Their method actually uses mosquito to fight these diseases. Very interesting, using mosquito to fight the disease itself. So to summarize their research actually tells one thing: if any insect has a bacteria called Wolbachia, they don't carry these diseases. So, what do we do now with Wolbachia and mosquitoes? I'll talk about Wolbachia in probably next two slides. But what WMP did is they took Wolbachia, they infected these mosquitoes, and they released the mosquitoes. So once they release the mosquitoes, what happens? They actually mates with the other mosquitoes, and what happens after that? Even the other mosquito also now has Wolbachia, and the offsprings also now carry Wolbachia, and this keeps multiplying. So doesn't this look like some movie story where the hero helps one person and then asks that person to help three more people, and that keeps multiplying? Same thing is happening here. You just infect one mosquito, and then it multiplies, and after some time there is only mosquitoes with Wolbachia in them. That is exactly what we want. So what is Wolbachia? 60% of all insect species you see as Wolbachia. Like you would have come across fruit flies, butterfly, all these carry Wolbachia, and that is one of the reason why they don't carry these diseases. This is very naturally occurring and non-toxic bacteria for both humans and environment. Environmentally sustainable, transmitted genetically from parent to offspring. And the most important thing is it reduces the ability of mosquito to transmit these diseases like dengue, Zika, and chikungunya. So, where did it all start? It started in northern Queensland, a city in Australia. Between 2011 to 2013, part of Queensland was selected, and this experiment was conducted. Then later, from that learning, from between 2016 to 2017, one more set of experiment was conducted at different parts of Queensland. So this experiment usually they do it between 5 to 23 weeks. they go release the mosquitoes. They carry the mosquitoes in boxes, containers, and they release it at different points. So there are multiple ways to doing that, but I just don't want to get in details into that. So what they noticed is, before conducting the experiment, if they randomly collect mosquitoes present in that environment, and they see only 20% of mosquitoes carried Wolbachia. After this experiment, around 94% mosquitoes on an average carried Wolbachia. That is exactly what they wanted. And even dengue cases and other mosquito-borne diseases reduced over a period of time. With this, they conducted the same experiment in different regions of the world, and pretty much the same everywhere. There was success. They saw a success everywhere. So with that, so they want to release it to more countries now. That is their next target. So how is this actually done? Now there are multiple steps involved. First step is scoping. For example, now you're planning to release mosquitoes in Hyderabad. You have to identify the release sites at which you want to do. I mean, the release points. And these release points are at every 100 meter, there is one release point. So once you identify these, then you plan for the infra. Then, based on the number of release points you have in the city, you genetically do this process. I mean, you rear mosquitoes in the labs. Once you rear the mosquitoes based on the requirement, then you release the mosquitoes at that release point. Then you monitor the mosquitoes over a period of time. So this is just taking mosquitoes, injecting it with Wolbachia, and then releasing it. What is difficult in this? So the biggest problem is its accuracy of choosing release sites in large city is very bigger challenge. So for a city like Hyderabad, if you want to select a release point at every 100 meter, that becomes very difficult thing, and it is resource intensive process and requires lot of GS expertise, and lot of analysis has to be done even choosing for one release point. And there is always risk of missing human settlement areas, which we don't want to, and requires correction by ground truthing. What does this mean is, usually what they were doing is they were sending the volunteers to each release points, and then they were verifying whether that release point is, whether they can go ahead with that release point or not. So this is a very costly process, and it took a lot of time to even plan the process. So what is the missing piece with this? So if you take a look at this one, WMP actually wants to release mosquitoes at 100 meter grid, and they want to release where there are more population of bad mosquitoes, the mosquitoes which carry these diseases. So bad mosquito population is directly proportional to human population. So now we need population data at 100 meter cross 100 meter, but like that is not available. The best source we have is gridded population, which is at 1 kilometer cross 1 kilometer. So what do we do now? So use Python, satellite images, and deep learning to stitch all this and then solve the problem. Before getting into processing of satellite imagery, I just want to show you what the final solution would look like. So I'll just show the demo. This is for a Kampala region in Uganda. So now first is I choose a region boundary where I want to conduct this process. Then we have population at 1 kilometer cross 1 kilometer grid. So if you look into this, like you find easily the places where there is more population, but this is at 1 kilometer cross 1 kilometer, and this is not useful for WMP. Now somehow we'll have to use satellite imagery, and what we did was we identified where building footprints are present in that locality. When we identify the building footprints, then we can distribute the population to 100 meter cross 100 meter. And if you look into, this is how the building footprints look. This we use deep learning model to identify where exactly buildings are present at different places in the city. There might be places in the city where there is a lot more buildings, and the other parts might be less buildings, and the size of the buildings also differ. There might be one area where there are a lot of apartments, then there are areas where there are less buildings. So this way, once we identify the building, then we can easily distribute the population at 100 meter cross 100 meter. So this is how now the release points look like, the based on the population data. If I zoom to some location, now the population, it shows the population at 100 meter, the building area and the building count is there are 17 buildings in that 100-meter grid, and the building area is 2170, and the population is estimated as 162. Once we identify this, then we can do a lot more things with that. I don't want to get into details of that, but to show what can be done is apply a normal clustering algorithm, which actually clusters the entire map into multiple clusters where you can release the mosquitoes. So, and this is just example what I'm showing, but there are a lot of statistical analysis that can be done further to accurately identify the mosquitoes. To identify the release points. So after this, let's get back where we were. So now you saw the demo. Let's see what has to be done. Now we have to process satellite imagery. And the libraries that we'll be using to process satellite imageries are Raster.io, RioCogGeo, GeoPandas, Mercantile, Fiona, Shapely. All these are some standard Python libraries for processing the satellite imagery. And then to talk about some sources, there are open source data that are available already, and then there are a lot of commercial source also. If you see open source, Landsat 8 is one that is pretty much used. Sentinel 2 is the other one. Say Landsat is at 30-meter resolution, Sentinel is at 10-meter. And when you come to commercial sources, SkySat is 80 centimeter, Worldview from Digital Globe is at 30 centimeter to 60 centimeter, ComSat 50 centimeter to 75 centimeter. For this use case, if the resolution is very good, then we get a very good results. So we went with a commercial source for doing this. I'll show you one small processing of satellite imagery. For this, let's get into notebook. I have taken Mumbai, a small portion of Mumbai, and I use Raster.io as I mentioned before. I'll be using Raster.io to process the satellite imagery. First, you notice there's a TIFF file. Usually, the satellite image, the standard format is TIFF files. So let's open the TIFF file. After opening the TIFF file, let's look into some metadata. The few important things here are width, height, and tilde. If you look into it, the width of the TIFF file is 4,784, so 40,784. Height is 78,639, and tilde is false. So, what's the problem with this? The problem is, assume that now you are working on a deep learning model, and I give you an image with a resolution of at least a 5,000, even a 5,000 cross 5,000. What do? You split that images into small parts, you created a chips, and then feed into a model. But with the TIFF file, splitting that into a smaller parts is very difficult. So we'll have to somehow find a way where we can query a portion of the TIFF file rather than taking the entire TIFF file. So that is where a concept called COGS come into picture. So I'll show what does COGS mean. So if you look into this, COGS is a cloud optimized GeoTIFF, and it's an imagery format for cloud native geospatial processing. I don't want to get into details here, but I want to highlight three important things. It is a regular GeoTIFF file. Then the second important point is it maintains internal organization. And then third important point is you can ask for just the parts of a file they need. So these 3 points are very key. It's a normal TIFF file. It maintains internal organization. And the most important is now you can query only the parts of TIFF file that you need. Exactly, that is what we want. So now thing is we'll have to convert the normal TIFF file to COG files. So for this, I'll be using RioCogGeo Python library, and then I'll be using COG translate function to convert it to the COG files. Again, here the two important thing is block X size, block Y size. What is this 512 and 512 here mean is, normally when you're working with any deep learning model, you either give 256, 248, 512, 1024, the standard sizes. So similarly, I'm using 512 cross 512 here. That is why I'm converting this TIFF file to 512 cross 512 tiled imagery. So once I do that, this automatically stores me the cog file in the path I mentioned. So let's now validate. First, let's validate the Mumbai file that I used, mumbai.tiff. It directly tells it's a false, it's not a TIFF file. Now when I do it with the cog file, it tells true. So that means that we are now converted a normal TIFF file to cog file. Next step is let's plot the boundary of this TIFF file. This is it. It is just plot. You don't have to worry about. So next thing is, for any deep learning model, you need ground truth data. You need a label data. So now if you want to create a label data for this use case, you will have to go sit and manually label all the buildings in the region that you want to train your model on. So that is very difficult process which you don't want to do. So we started looking into alternatives, and OpenStreetMap actually is a very good source which contain a lot of details for us. So let's see what is OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap is a map of the world similar to your Google Maps, but this is one good thing is this is open source and it is tagged by like the people like us. Like we can just look into a map. If we find our like our own house, we can just go create a tag to that. So this is very powerful tool, and I would recommend everyone to use this and contribute to the OpenStreetMap. I'm sure this is the right time to do that. I am like most of you are in your hometowns, in your like villages, so most of the buildings are not tagged, roads are not tagged. Like some parts of forest, like for example, if you find some park, those are not tagged in your remote place. Just go to that, and if you find any buildings that are not tagged, please tag it so that it helps to build a powerful solutions like this. So like using this OpenStreetMap, we pulled in the building data that is there already from OpenStreetMap. Before I do that, let's write this bounds, the geometry that was there in the cog file, to a GeoJSON file. So to show what this GeoJSON look like, as I said, this is a part of Mumbai that I'm working on. So this is the boundary. The TIFF file is from, I mean, this is the TIFF file is from this region. So now I have written this into a GeoJSON file. Let's read that in GeoPandas. GeoPandas is pandas for all shape data. So I'm using GeoPandas here to read the GeoJSON, and I print one row in the GeoPandas. If you directly see, there will be only one row because it's a one shape. It contains only one shape, and the most important part is polygon that is there in the geometry column. So with this polygon, we will take this polygon and then try to pull the data from OpenStreetMap. So here we use OSMNX as the Python library. So using this, there is function called footprints from polygon, and we specify the GeoJSON geometry present in GeoJSON file. So when you do that, all the buildings that are in that boundary, we can now will be able to see it. So that is now stored in a data frame called builds. Let's see what that data frame look like. So it contains two columns. One is the index and the other one is geometry. And each geometry is the building present. I mean, it is a building polygon. And if you print the shape, there are around 18,258 rows. That means that in that boundary that we gave, there are 18,258 buildings. Let's plot that. If I plot the buildings, this is how it looks. There are like buildings at this place, at different places. There are good amount of buildings tagged, and some places the buildings are not tagged at all. So with this, now we have extracted the OpenStreetMap, the labels that was required, and we have even converted our TIFF file into a cog file. Now the next thing is you will have to even convert the labels into 512 cross 512 to give to the model. So let's convert the vector data that we got to 512 cross 512. So before converting this vector data, what we can do easily is Rather than converting the building footprints that we received from OSM to 512 cross 512, we divide the GeoJSON file into 512 cross 512, like smaller parts of 512 cross 512. And to do that, we use something called Super Mercado. What this Super Mercado burn 18 year indicating is, as I already said, I'll be working on Mumbai TIFF file, and that is at 30 centimeter resolution. For working with 30 centimeter resolution, the zoom level you have to give is 18 if you want to convert it to 512 cross 512. If you are converting it to 1024 cross 1024, then you specify a different zoom level. You can look into a different zoom level. I mean, it is easily available. But if you want to divide 5 into 512 cross 512, you specify 18 as the zoom level. Then I write back to one more GeoJSON now. This is named as Mumbai underscore 18z.geojson. If I show you what that GeoJSON looks like, this is how it looks. The same GeoJSON, but now it contains a smaller grids as well. This is 512 cross 512 grid, similar to 512 cross 512 TIFF grids. So with this, we can now easily merge these two things, the GeoJSON we created and the OpenStreetMap data. We can merge it. So to merge that, what we have to do is, if it was a normal pandas two data frames, we would have directly merged it. But here, rather than directly merging it, we'll have to use something called special join. This special join will map that particular grid to all the buildings that are present in that particular the spatial bounds. So we'll use in yes join of GeoPandas. Once we do that, then we'll be able to map the grids to the building footprints. And after that, I'm just doing some cleaning of data frame. I mean, that is a normal cleaning process. Then if I print the head, I see a index, ID, title, geometry, XYZ, and footprints. And footprints are none in this case, but why it is none? Because there is no buildings in that particular grid. So let's first filter out all the none footprints to get only data frame with only buildings. When I do that, and then visualize a grid, let's visualize how one grid looks like. So this is how it looks. We took a bigger TIFF file and then we converted into a 512 cross 512, and we extracted a OSM data, and we also converted that OSM data into 512 cross 512. And if I plot that, this is how it looks. There is a TIFF file in the left side and the OSM data in the right side. This is exactly what we want to feed into a model. This is just the one grid. You can write a loop to extract all the grids in the TIFF file, and also similarly all the vector information from OSM data. And this way you can create a data set for giving it to the model. So you have prepared the data. Now let's go to modeling part. So if I go back to the presentation, so now the stage two, after data preparation, the stage two is a deep learning model. So if you look into this, you'll easily know this is a segmentation problem, and it is semantic segmentation problem. What is semantic segmentation problem is, each pixel level, the model tells whether which class it belongs to, whether it belongs to a class A or class B or class D, class C, class D. But in our case, there are only two classes. One is whether it is a building or it's a background. So it is a two class semantic segmentation problem. And to do two class semantic segmentation problem, I think many might be knowing already, UNet performs very well for these kind of tasks. So we chose UNet architecture for performing semantic segmentation. And in UNet, there are two parts. One is encoder and then the other one is decoder. Rather than using a plain encoder, we used VGG encoder. We would have loved to use other encoders like ResNet, EfficientNet, and other like Inception, other encoders. But we were processing huge amount of satellite data for a lot of regions, and time was a bigger concern. So we stuck to VGG, but I don't think there will be much of accuracy improvement by just using RESTnet and efficient net, there might be a chances the accuracy might come down. In our case, with time and accuracy not being that important, VGG served us very well. So UNet with VGG is the model that we used. So once we trained the model, like we trained on some set of regions, like if this is like again becomes very important. If you are, how do you choose this training set, validation set? So we choose such a way that the model adopts to different regions. Buildings might be different in India. The same buildings might be different in maybe, for example, you're talking about Uganda. The building shapes and building features might be different. The way a building looks. So we wanted the model to understand different types of building in different regions. That is why we trained the model on huge number of regions wherever there is OpenStreetMap data available. So once the modeling is done, then we have to do post processing. So as soon as I come to this, like one important thing again I have to tell is the predictions that is generated from model will not be that good. Why it won't be that good is the building shapes, since it's predicting pixel wise pixel, the shapes of the buildings won't look that nice. So we'll have to use some techniques to make the buildings very like simplified. We'll have to convert the building predicted from the model to in a simplified manner. To do that, we used a Shapely library as many techniques to smoothen the polygon. We used one of the technique to smoothen the buildings. Then once building footprints was extracted, again like the same, to go back to the problem, we take GPW data. Now we have building footprints also. Now we have to distribute that GPW data to 100 meter cross 100 meter. So either we can use building count in that particular region or building area, and we also use something called NDVI. NDVA actually gives the vegetation present at different parts of the city. So, for example, there is one particular region that contains only vegetation. You don't want to consider that at all. So, we filter that using NDVI. Combining all these things, we got the release points. So now after the post processing, let's put it all together. We identify the region of interest, then we prepare the data, then that after preparation it goes to a model. After the model, we estimate the population. So this is about the three-step process that we followed. So outcomes highlights of the solution. Now, like the time that like even for a smaller region, WMP was taking 3 weeks to even do this process, but now it has reduced to 2 hours, and now they are able to accurately release the mosquitoes. The release points are much accurate than rather than someone sitting and identifying manually. And post processing monitoring also becomes easier. I mean, if they feel that certain portion of the like area is missed because in the model, they can easily validate and then retrain the model. So that process has become very easy for them now. So, to summarize all the things, I spoke about few very important things. One is cloud optimized geotiffs. That is very important if you are processing any satellite imagery. First thing is you convert that into a cloud optimized diff. And the second thing is always don't think that you'll have to manually label for giving for ground truth data for giving it to the model. You can use for you can search for the other sources. In this case, OpenStreetMap was like a very good fit for us, and I would encourage again everyone to contribute to OpenStreetMap. And if you notice, one important thing we actually missed is we never identified the building height. That also plays very important role in identifying the population, which we did not do, and but we are working on that. So if anyone has idea on calculating the building height from satellite imagery, please reach out to us. And in future, if someone says that they want to release Wolbachia mosquitoes in your locality, please educate others. Thank you.
Thanks for a lovely session, Ranjan.
Okay,
Couple of
thank you.
people reached out. Do you share the code and slides at the end? Can we get the slides?
Yes, I can share this code that I showed, but the entire solution is not open source because of a few reasons. But in future, at least part of code will open source it, the entire code. But this code, I can definitely put it in the repository and give it.
Cool. That'll be great. Others, any questions? All right. I'll request Ranjan to be in a table in the lounge for some time. If you want to have a chat with him, please do join the lounge. Thanks again, Ranjan.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for joining. Uh,
Thanks.
Please do hang around for the keynote. For the height of building calculation, you might be able to get from shadow length. So the stuff of sci-fi, the building has been measured by measuring the shadow of the building. It's difficult to do that. I would try it. Um, I request please Sandeep and Avinash to join the launch and take the questions there. I hope you got the questions, Ranjan. Okay, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Banu. I mean, we tried that technique as well. Like there are few people using SAR imagery where they're using the shadow of the building, like off-nadir angles, like the satellite imagery captured from off-nadir angles. But that solution also did not work that well. There are few SAR image sources that we are trying now to calculate the building height. I think that is like the best we found, but yeah, would love to listen to others as well. Yeah, this is one technique, yeah, we tried out as well.
Sure. Thanks, Ranjan. I hope that answered your question, Sandeep and Avinash. But please do hang around in the lounge again. Thanks again for joining. Please do hang around for the keynote. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.